So, welcome back, guys, to Unlock. So today I want to talk about data, and it's been on my mind lately because we've been having this study. And to be fair with you, I've been in business for, I think, in December it'll be 6 years, and so here in a couple of weeks it'll be 6 years. And I don't even know how we've gotten to 6 years without really knowing all the data that we know now. And I think it's a huge proxy for growth. And it's a huge reason why a lot of companies don't grow or scale based on what I'm seeing lately. So I had the chance to attend a workshop a couple of months ago. And I realized that every question that I was asking was answered with another question. And the question back that I would always get was, so, well, what's your percentage here? What's your data on this? And what's your churn this? What's your employee here? What do the surveys say about this or that? And I realized I didn't have any of this stuff. So now looking back, I realized, wow, you running a business today is pretty easy. Like, you can kind of wing it and you're probably going to thrive if you have enough intensity, if you are driving the sales. And so let's say, for example, I'll tell you a little bit of what my experience has been over the last month. Okay. So let's say you have a recruiting business, and all it matters is for people to get hired into a position and stay. So it's a lot about what I'm looking into lately, because we're in sales recruiting, it's the same thing. And, we started looking at, okay, if there's a company that has a 90% turnover, 90% employee churn for 30 days for a direct selling position. And then they have a 70% employee churn for the first 7 days. Like, the same company though, spends, let's say in my case, it would be, sorry about the math, but about 3 or 4 people full-time, which is about 160 hours a week. So that's 640 hours a month. So 640 hours it takes us to retain 10% of people. And let's say over the course of 4 weeks, over the course of a month, we onboarded 60 people that have showed up, and only 10% have stayed after 30 days. So only 6 out of 60 people that have actually stayed. So if it takes me, I didn't know any of this data. So if it takes me 640 hours, I'm going to do the math here with you really quick. Sorry, I should have done this before. But if it takes me 640 hours to grow to net 6 people, that means it costs me 100 hours per person. And this is considering I didn't have anybody else leave the company during those 30 days, which is unlikely in a sales position. So what I want everybody to think about is, look, it actually doesn't take a lot of skill. It doesn't take nothing else than really maybe a little bit of time to think about what is it that you're running into. So a few people have lately asked me, well, how do you do this bonus? Or how do you run this metric? Or how do you leverage this or that? How do you onboard this and that? And my answer keeps going back to the data. So, well, you got to know your data, because if you go and copy a bonus that I'm doing, if I tell you, hey, I'm doing a $1,500 onboarding bonus for people in a recruiting role so they can last more than 10 days, you can copy it, but it might not work for you. Chances are it'll do something, but if you don't actually take the time to study the data, you're going to notice that you're not really going to get anywhere. You're going to spin your wheels. And I'm super frustrated because I think back of the last 6 years, how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours we spend, for example, on recruiting. And it takes over 100 hours to onboard one person, to actually retain one person after you take out all the turnover. You just think about it like this. If you as a company spend 80% of your time and money, resources, recruiting on one task, you would expect yourself to be really good at it. But if I spend 80% of my time recruiting, and out of the 80% of my time, I'm only netting 6 people after 1 month, considering I've onboarded 60. And that means it takes me 106 hours to onboard something. That means on a 40-hour work week, I would have to start on Monday. Think about a regular job. Think about somebody waking up on Monday, going to work, Tuesday going to work, Wednesday going to work. They go home on Friday. They do it again the next week. That's 80 hours. Then they start the third week, and then they do Monday, Tuesday, and half of Wednesday. So they work for 2.5 weeks full time on one task to just onboard one person. It's bananas. Like, it's got to be so frustrating. So I just think about it and I'm like, we have to get so much better, because imagine if I can just cut that in by 20%. if I can just, instead of 100 hours, take 80 hours to spend over the course of a year, over the course of 12 months, 24 months, over the course of 36 months, over the course of 4 and 5 years, if I'm gaining 10% more, the multiplier is so much bigger. And the reason I think that matters is because, again, if you're an employee, if you're whatever percentage, that whatever data you have in your company, that's 80% or 90%, it should be really easy to shave it down 5 points or to shave it down 10 points just by paying attention. Problem is, a lot of people, I'm not going to say you, people won't pay attention unless they have the data in their face. So it's so important that you look at these things. And like, I literally had to, pay $5,000 to go to a workshop to get reminded, like, hey, you have to know your data so that you can actually fix it. And so what I would encourage everybody to do is, hey, what parts of so I would encourage every person that's in business, or even if you're a manager of some department, or if you just have some sort of career growth role oriented, just take at least 30 minutes a week to like actually sit down and write down what frustrates. So whatever it is that you need to fix. So let's say it's Saturday morning, or maybe it's Sunday night and you use that as a prep for the week. But I would encourage you, hey, sit down on a blank piece of paper, put your phone down, don't get distracted, and try to find frustrating points. Maybe it's, I'm not making enough money, or maybe it's that my profit margin is very low, or maybe I just want to make more money and work less. I'm so tired of working so much. I want to make more money without increasing the work. Interesting question. Maybe I'm frustrated because people keep leaving, or maybe I'm frustrated because my staff keeps asking me for a raise every 30 days and they're not really earning it. Maybe I'm frustrated because the sales aren't high, or whatever. And so you just want to write all these things down on a piece of paper. And so let's say I'm not making enough money. So I'm writing down, I'm frustrated about the money. And then I want to collect every piece of data that I can collect that can help me narrow that down. So I'm going to pull out all the profit and loss records. I'm going to get my accountant on a call. I'm going to get everybody involved in the expenses, and I'm going to get everybody involved on the, revenue, or the sales team, whatever. And I'm going to go point by point, finding what's the data. Okay. So I'm going at the revenue. I'm thinking, what's my revenue for the week? What contributes to this revenue? Okay. How many sales we did? How many units is that? How many hours does it take to sell one unit on average? How many people does it take to sell this many units? If I went up by people, what would be my projection? If I cut down in people, would my sales stay the same, or would they go lower? Is there a way that increase the activation rate? Is there a way that I can increase the pay rate based on quality control, based on whatever? And so I'm looking at all of that for my revenue. Then I'm thinking, okay, let's go down to expenses. And I study the expenses. I promise you, and most people are not doing this. It's like, okay, like, how much am I spending on food every week? How much am I spending on supplies every week? How much am I spending every week on recruiting, on advertising, on marketing? And I'm breaking it all down, and I'm getting the data for each line. So I go to marketing, okay, marketing data, and I figure out what all is contributing to this total amount of dollars. And I look at it, and I find out where it comes from, and I study it. Then I go to office supplies, and then I go to all my expenses to travel, and I figure out, where is all this money coming from? Where is it all going to? And then I look at my margin, and I realize, okay, this is my overall margin, and I can make a projection. So let's say I make 20% of my top line revenue is my profit. So if I make $100,000, my profit is $20,000 after all expenses and before tax. So I got to be okay. And then I do the math backwards. Again, I think a lot of people aren't doing the math backwards, or they're not setting up a goal. So if I want to make $40,000, I got to put the math down. $40,000, that means I probably need $200,000 in revenue. Then I go back to all those little metrics, and it's a tiny 1,000 little things that you need to like improve. Okay, I got to 100,000 revenue. How do I get it to 200,000? And I got to look at each metric. And some of them you don't need to double. In your head, you're thinking, well, if I just double all these metrics, then I'll eventually double from 100 to 200,000. But it doesn't have to be, because you can increase the activation rate, or you can decrease churn, and that would get you the number to be higher without necessarily doubling the volume. And there's a whole world, as you can imagine, there's just a whole world here that we're not really exploring enough. And for me, I'm diving in really into data, and I wish I would have learned better. And it's like such an underrated skill to know how to manage, spreadsheets and Google Sheets and Excel and all this stuff, because it's so important. And now I look back and I'm thinking, wow, anybody that's built any significant business, if you are, a good point is, if you're thinking like this, if you're like, well, where do I start? Here's a good place where you can start, or what I would recommend starting. It would be, if my company was going to be purchased by somebody, or if my department, or it doesn't matter. If my, whatever I'm overseeing, if it was going to be purchased by somebody, would this investor, what would they want? And the first thing they would probably want is a financial statement. And they would ask, like, well, where's the money going? And if the finances aren't organized, if they aren't, like, if there's not like a 1, 2, 3 year track record of clean, like, organized CP, like good financials, then it's probably not worth even looking, because all the data is pointing at the wrong problem. And so the reason I know is because I know a lot of people in business that are spending 60, 70 hours of their own personal time per week. Plus they're hiring staff for another 40 to 80 hours. So I know business people that are spending over 100 hours in manpower, whether it's them or not, it's irrelevant, but over 100 hours of manpower, staff, taxes, management, time off, all that involves 100 hours or more per week. So that's 5,200 hours a year or more to get like less than 1% of growth. Right. It's ridiculous. And so I wonder if somebody saw that data, like, hey, last year you spent 5,200 hours on this one task, or 52,000, whatever the number is. You spent all 100 hours last week on the one task of growing, and you didn't grow. You actually went backwards because you had 2 people quit and you only hired 1 person. You actually are -1. You would realize that your business is broken. You would realize that no investor would ever invest into that or buy that. So therefore you have to fix it. And I think a lot of people have enough talent, but they just don't have the data. And I think it's the responsibility of the business person or the person that's in charge to figure out this data. Because for me, it was extremely frustrating. And now we're doing a little bit better. But more than anything, I just have so much more hope now, because I'm looking at the data and I'm thinking, wow, it's so encouraging to see it grow. It's so encouraging to reduce employee churn by 15% in 3 weeks. It's so encouraging to increase whatever number. You might even be doing good and you don't know, because like it's not being tracked properly. So that's what's a little bit in my mind. It's like, I recommend, you track your data. I recommend you figure out what is the most frustrating thing. Sit down with yourself 30 minutes a week, write down on paper your frustrations, pile up all the data that equals those numbers, equals those things, and then keep like a log on it weekly. Maybe you get some help from somebody that can help you track it, but I promise you, if you spent 100 hours a week interviewing to grow the company, and after 100 hours you have net 1 person, when you've onboarded 50, you should be extremely disappointed to realize that your 100 hours a week is giving you a 0.03% of growth in the company that week, and that for some reason you might still think you're actually a good interviewer, which data says probably something's going wrong there. So just a lot of data, a lot of numbers in my head. Very, very acidic stuff. Very, very just, I don't know. You gotta be good with numbers, but if not, you can get somebody to help you. So that's what's been on my mind lately. And I encourage you to look at your data, know what your hours are creating, what's the percentage, what's the number, what's the dollar amount that you're making, losing, directly related to the investment of your biggest, manpower. And you will definitely increase just by seeing it. There's a study that said that people not on a diet, people not doing exercise, people that get on the scale every day lose more weight than people that don't get on the scale. Just the awareness of your weight and looking at it every day creates, more people lose weight than people that just don't look at it. And it's, I think, why data is so powerful. So hope that helps.